नाम लिखना है, इसमें नाम ही लिखने होगी तो ले दे। तो कहीं बंद कर देता।
All right, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from all over the world who are joining the GPK Foundation's. This is 12th Global Zoom conference today. And today we will be discussing on concept and concerns of, we thought of South Asian journalists, but again, we got some suggestions and ideas to make it Asian journalists. So let us focus on Asian journalists and share your opinion, ideas, and experiences for the journalists' betterment on post-COVID-19. And let us focus on the topic that is given, concept and concerns of Asian journalists in post-COVID-19. And we will have 7 to 8 minutes of presentation or speech of our respected panelists who are in this forum today. And a couple of panelists are joining from Korea, one from Korea and one from Japan and another one from India. 3 of them are joining and just got the message. They will be, they are having some technical issues. So as we begin, I hope they will get in the discussion. So without any delay, I would like to introduce Honorable Sujata Koirala, who is also the former Deputy Prime Minister of Nepal, former Foreign Minister of Nepal, and the chairperson of Girija Prasad Koirala Foundation. And the foundation's central office is located in Kathmandu, Nepal. Next, I would like to introduce Dipendra Bantawa. He is the executive editor of AP1 TV from Kathmandu, Nepal. One from Bhutan is joining, okay. Next, I would like to introduce Priyanka Sharma. She will be joining in a short while. Senior correspondent and Gujarat Bureau Chief of Republic TV, India. Next, we have Dr. Professor Indrajit S. Saluja, Chief Editor and Publisher of the Indian Panorama, USA. Next, we have Anil Pariyar, Assistant Senior Sub-Editor, Radio Kantipur for Kathmandu, Nepal. Next, we have from Korea, Professor Dr. Han Dae-ho, President of Korean Sesarium Sports, and he is a great writer also. Next, we have Bharatraj Paudel, Editor at Large from SouthAsia.com Australia. Then we have our sister, Lara Gregory, attorney at law, ESQ from Legal Good, and she has been working very closely with our Nepali communities in the US. And she will go more about later when she speaks. Next, we have Pushkar Acharya, President of Nepal Trade Union Congress, Central President from Nepal. Next, we have Ajay Kumar Rai, Central Vice President of Nepal Trade Union Congress. Next, we have Bir Bahadur Shejawal, President of Nepal Trade Union Congress, Salyan. Then we have Naren Babu Karki, President of Nepal Trade Union Congress, Province 1. And just joined now with us, DP Kaple. He is General Secretary from People's Forum from Human Rights, Bhutan, and columnist. Then next we have the panelist, Mr. Ranjan Raj Kunwar, President of Federal of Nepali Journalists from Korea. Then we have Sushil Koirala, Nepal Trade Union Congress, President of Morong. Okay, without any delay, I would like to invite our Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Sujata Koirala, for her welcome remarks.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Please unmute. Unmute. Cannot hear you.
That's the volume, I think.
Yes.
Volume is
Unmute. Yes, good. Bye.
but volume need to be a little bit up.
Volume high. Volume high, please.
Okay. Sunil, can you hear me?
Yeah, a little bit, but it needs to be up.
Okay.
Yes, good. Bye. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I would like to extend cordial greetings and warm welcome to all the distinguished guests and participants. Journalism has crucial role to transform the society, and it informs and educates the people in different aspects. And it can act as an watchdogs for the formulation of public policy and highlighting the blocks to development such as corruption, human rights abuses, and inefficient of the governance. Therefore, journalism, journalists, and media are acting as bridge between government and society. Media are most important means of communication during this pandemic situation, as they inform and aware the people. Media has the power to calm the people as well as choose the people for positive and negative actions. The pattern of journalism has also been changed during these days. Previously, we were depending only on print media, radio and television, but at this digital age, we cannot run away from advanced and smarter technologies. Digital journalism, which is very convenient and bring changes to people's behavior in new world of post-COVID-19 too. Also, the artificial intelligence is becoming an important tool to journalists' future. It is very easy for journalists to fact checking before they publish their news, views, or interviews. The web browser makes easy access for journalists to get and give information ethically and correctly. The content of the news itself should be appealing and maintaining the professionalism to the eye of the viewers and readers. But in the developing countries, still there is lack of professionalism. Few corporate media houses and journalists are being used in different missions. On the other hand, digital media are losing their reliability because of publishing the fake news. Although I am not a journalist, but also has been a victim of yellow journalism. I think the growing digitization of journalism, which brings unprecedented benefits as well as safety risk and credibility. Digital security threats like spoofing, malware, and cyber spying have grown and evolved in recent years. Journalists and media house are the source of information and data. Therefore, the protection of data in this digital era, journalism is more challenging job. Only the high level of ethics and efforts can save this all. Additionally, journalists are also facing number of challenges and exploitation from owner in South Asian countries. I heard that so many journalists are still working on low pay, and top media houses also do not pay salary timely and forced to leave the job. It is going to worse during this pandemic. Hence, I strongly argue to provide the facilities for the journalists. I firmly believe that we shall enable to resolve the problems arising in journalism with combined effort of all concerns. Thank you so much, all of you, and I wish for the grand success of this program. Thank you.
Thank you for your welcome remarks, Honorable Sujata Koirala, former Deputy Prime Minister and former Foreign Minister and the chairperson of GP Koirala Foundation. Thanks again. Now, I would like to invite Dipendra Bantawa, executive editor of AP1 TV from Kathmandu, Nepal, for your views on concept and concerns of South Asian journalists post-COVID-19. Please welcome Dipendra Bantawa.
Thank you, Somnath Ghimirji. Honorable Sujata Koirala, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the phenomenal opportunity. I hope all of you are safe. Actually, we Nepali journalists are facing very big problems in Nepal. We are practicing in a very worse way. Actually, things have changed tremendously in the past month. I hope we all can cope with this turmoil. Every challenge demands more time, passion, and zeal in journalism. This pandemic is no exception. As all we know, here we as a journalists are bound to give first-hand information, and yet we need to be safe. This is something rigorously challenging. As a working journalist, I will present a rough data that I know. A rough data estimates about 15,000 journalists are working in Nepal. So approximately 7,000 journalists are full-timer. This is an assumption that in this pandemic, during 5-6 months, about 1,500 to 2,000 journalists lost their job after this COVID-19. Actually, business and jobs in media sector are shrinking due to the economic crisis. Some journalists are forced to work, as our Sujata ma'am said, to work without remuneration. And this is a very saddening thing. I think this is something we all need to focus on, because unpaid and half-paid journalists cannot concentrate in their work. Even this is bad for overall journalism. So because demotivated journalists can no more perform as watchdog. Even big house journalists also, they are also insecure about their job, right? These days, the effect is overall. So this is blatantly affect in media economy. 30 to 40% of advertisement market is decreased. So no doubt it will affect to journalists sooner or later. In Nepal, there is a high chance of unemployment if media industry fails to operate. It is difficult to predict how journalism itself will take shape. If this pandemic continues and government does not come with adequate measures to revitalize industry, huge number of journalists will be troubled. So that's something we need to address seriously, I think. So mostly journalists are facing two kinds of problems that, in my views, that I can say right now. First is journalists are working with heavy risks of COVID-19, especially field reporters. They are in high risk. Journalists are forced to work without proper safety measures these days in Nepal. Government guidelines, policies unclear. There is a risk even using safety measures. It's very sad to say that till date, 80 journalists are infected with this virus. So many journalists are in isolations, performing their job with the coordination of technologies. Like journalists are coping to work with a new normal, that is virtual reporting, and all, but it takes time to be familiar with such technologies. This is not a normal situation. We have been hearing since long time journalists are frontliner, but nothing backs this statement. Neither government nor the stakeholders consider them as a frontliner. So their security is least bother. This is the first problem we are facing. And the second problem that we are facing is professional safety. Journalists are in tension that they are working, but there is no certainty about their job for journalists. So there is risks and psychological tremor for journalists. In this situation, journalists deserve extra perks, but sadly they are not getting salary regularly. In this scenario, journalists are facing problems to reach to their sources, which lessens the credibility of journalists. Somehow this results so many chaos. So press freedom is shrinking, I should say. I think Nepali media sector is in difficult situation in its history, but difficult time also leads us to some opportunities. Hope this adversity will bring a lot of positivity in our field. I would like to believe we will be considered as a serious sector. Maybe we've taken as a sector which is not secure in terms of many aspects, and the concerned authority might act to strengthen the security and all. The whole journalism is shifting. I'm sure we will see some silver lining within these uncertainties. As journalism is a very creative field, so it requires sound mental state. Due to so many uncertainties, the creativity is falling apart. That is something we need to look upon. And this is the second point that I should mention. And so I cannot say about the whole situation of the Asian journalists, but I can say only about the Nepali journalists that there should be a huge understanding between journalists and media house in this crucial time. We are facing that there is no understanding between media houses owners and between journalists. So both parties should understand that it's a crucial time, and time like this needs massive understanding and trust. Media house should know journalists' problems. Journalists also should understand media house difficulties, because this is not something an individual can solve. It requires a lot of mutual cooperations. It requires governments should intervene for the betterment. Government involvement might also be needed to address journalists, media house, and whole media industry scars. But sadly, government is not serious. I also repeat it again, government is not serious. In my opinion, government is unable to understand pandemic. I'm sorry to say, in Nepal, government is not taking it seriously. Until and unless government feels it should come up as a guardian, there is a thin chance of media industry's survival. So government need to pronounce special packages to these industries to cope with this adverse situation. So we are facing a very big problems, and I don't know where we are going to end this journalism field. So this is what I want to say. Somnathji, at the end, there is no option. We have to face it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dipendra Bantawaji, for your database and the situation and the current situation of the journalists, especially in Nepal. Thanks again. Now I would like to invite Priyanka Sharma, Senior Correspondent and Gujarat Bureau Chief of Republic TV. Priyanka Sharma from India. She is joining from India. Priyanka Sharma. Your video is not on. I think just disconnected. We have the technical issues, I believe she's been going through. While she joins, I'll call her later again. And next, our panelist, Professor Dr. Indrajit S. Saluja, Chief Editor and Publisher of the Indian Panorama, USA.
Thank you so for having me. Good morning, everybody. And good evening to those who are in a different time zone. As I was listening to Sujata Madam, I realized that she has very clearly pointed out what are the obligations and responsibilities of the journalist. And she also touched upon a very unseeming aspect of journalists' lives in probably, she said, in context with Nepal, that journalists are not being well paid, that just journalists are not paid timely, and that was what my friend later who spoke, Dipendra, also touched upon. Well, I think I'll take a different road altogether. You know, when we are talking about journalists, concepts and concerns of Asian journalists, Now, are we talking about the concepts and concerns of journalists in Asian countries, or we are talking about concepts and concerns of Asian journalists in the US? Mr. Som, would you like to comment on this question of mine before I proceed?
Yes, we are focusing on the Asian countries, and we are from the U.S. journalists. We are giving our views.
We are giving our perspective. We are
Yes.
giving our perspective.
Yes.
We are not talking about this country where we are operating, but we are commenting on the countries we come from or that
Right.
we are familiar with in the Asian continent.
Right.
Right. And that is the major difference between the approach that I have and probably you are trying to peddle. Now, as a journalist who has been practicing here for 15 to 20 years, most of us are citizens of this country.
Right.
Many are green card holders, permanent residents, and only a few might be there who may not have a status and yet they are operating. Now, the problem here is that when we come to this country, we bring that baggage from our own country. We try to promote the politics of our own country that we come from. Look at what's happening in Nepal. You are trying to peddle a particular ideology. I have been familiar with Koirala family. I mean, I'm a 75-year-old man, and I was the one who knew much about Nepal, having been a student with Nepalese students in Banaras in the university. I knew about the political problems there. And also I know something about what happened there when the leftists took over and later on other things, So what I would say, Som, is that we have to we have to resolve the conflict, this conflict. We have Asian countries. Now, today, India is having problem with China. China is an Asian country. So naturally, you would not expect a journalist from China to speak in favor of India. And the Indian journalist like me would not speak in favor of China. So we have the regional conflicts. Even with Nepal, India has certain outstanding conflicts. We have conflicts with China. India has conflicts with China. India has conflict with Pakistan in a big way. India has conflict with Sri Lanka in certain ways. India has conflict with Bangladesh. So where does a journalist stand? How can a journalist be objective in analyzing when you take an emotional view of this situation, because you are committed to your country? Like I'm an Indian here. I think of India. I will try to promote the concern of India here. So this conflict, is the basic, which is to be resolved by the journalist. The first thing I would expect of all my friends, whatever country they may come from, is that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what country we come from. The only thing that matters is the truth. If China happens to be doing it right and India happens to be wrong, I should have the courage to say, look here, Mr. Modi, China, Mr. Xi is right and you are wrong. That is the kind of thing, the first thing that a journalist should realize. This should be his major concern, that he analyzes every situation truthfully and not being guided by the concerns of political ideology or by the concerns of race or religion. Now, what is happening in India right now? One party is trying to force its own theological concepts in India. It's a theocratic state at the moment, even though you don't call it a Hindu Rashtra. But in effect, it is a Hindu Rashtra where the minorities are being subjected to all kinds of what you call discriminations and indignities, if I could say that. We don't have to go far to know about what is happening in India. And on top of it, how idolatrous we are just thinking of one man, Narendra Modi, Modi. It's Modi brand which is selling. So Modi, people have taken to Modi Kacha, Modi Banyan, Modi medicine, Modi balm, and Modi everything. Now, what are we promoting? We are promoting a cult. And my friends who are here with me, they should know that cult promotion has always damaged a nation. It has damaged the society. So this promotion of cult has to be stopped. How do we stop it? Look at the TV channels, in India. I'm really ashamed of some of them who have nothing else to do except talk about Modi, and BJP, Hindu Rashtra. That is all they are doing. And where are the others? Those who stand up to them, they are immediately branded as anti-nationals, unpatriotic. Now, I don't think a journalist worth its salt should be cowed down by this kind of a criticism. We have to call a spade a spade. That is the first thing we need to do. We don't compromise with the government. I don't agree with my friend Deependra, who complained that the governments don't do anything for the journalists. Why should the governments do? Governments would do for you only when you sing to their tune, sing their tunes. Only when you peddle their policies. And as Sujata very rightly pointed out, journalists, they are the ones who are actually behind policy formation, because they give the information, the credible information. They give the analysis, they give the ideas, and on the basis of all that, and they give the kind of criticism if the government is going wrong, that the policies are formed. What is happening in India? Some journalists who have the courage, they are thrown out of job. Those who were weak, they went back begging for the jobs. Those who were not weak, they said, come on, we stand our ground and we are going to see to it that what we say is the truth and truth alone. I may have a wrong analysis. That's a different issue. But I'm giving a truthful analysis as far as I understand the situation. That is what is required. Not the security of job, not emoluments, not wages. If I were to make money, I would not be the editor and publisher of the Indian Panorama. My son, who is doing a small job, he is making about 8,000 a month, and I am not. You all sitting there know, all those Asian journalists who are here and working in USA, you know how you are making and what you are making and how we are making both ends meet. So my friends, my only concern is truthful reporting. My only concern is a truthful analysis as far as I can do it. And I do it regardless of the national boundaries, regardless of the color of skin, regardless of the faith people follow. To me, it is really Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the whole humanity is one world. And the whole world is a village where we are operating and where we know each other so well. Nothing is hidden. What Trump is doing today, or what Biden is saying today, or what the Democrats do, or what the Republicans do, nothing is hidden from us. The only thing that is hidden is that we do not speak out. Let us first learn to speak out. Thank you so much for listening to me patiently. And thank you very much, Som, for giving me this opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Indrajit Saluja, the senior most journalist, I believe, in the panel today, for your sharing your experiences and the views and giving some tips Thanks again. And without any delay, I would like to invite Priyanka Sharma. I think her technical issues has been solved. Priyanka Sharma, Superintendent, Gujarat Bureau Chief and of
Am I
Republic.
audible?
Yes. Your video is not on. Yes. Go ahead. Good.
Am I visible and audible?
Yes.
Apologies for that. I think there is some network problem.
Yes, Priyanka ji.
Mrs. Tom, sorry, one moment. Mrs. Tom, Mr. Tom.
Yes, Dr. Saluja.
Yeah, I remember just now that it is 5th of September, which is the day of the which is birthday of Dr. S. Radhakrishnan, a
Right.
former president of India, and
Right.
this day is celebrated as Teachers' Day in India. So let us say Happy Teachers' Day to all our Indian friends.
Okay, happy Teachers' Day to all Indian
Happy
friends.
Teachers' Day.
So we are joined by now Habib Rahman, co-founder of TBN24 TV, and he is a very great TV talk show host. So please welcome Habib Rahman. He has just joined. Now, I think Priyanka Sharma has another technical issues. Moving further, I would like to invite Lara Gregory. Lara Gregory. ESQ. Lara Gregory, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Somnath, for giving me an opportunity to address this really great crowd. I know that we are in different time zones. Some people are already sleepy. Some of us just woke up. I just had coffee, so if my voice is too loud or if I'm too energetic, you have to pardon me. I had 2 cups of coffee, but I'm here. I'm very, very happy to be talking to everyone. I'm an occasional news columnist and an everyday human being and lawyer. Indeed, although I do not call myself a journalist, you and I, particularly the journalists, are together in making history. The news and events reported today will be referred to as historical facts later on. And there lie the challenge. How do all of us guard the sanctity of facts? In his book, Structure of Scientific Revolutions, published in the 70s, Thomas Kuhn spoke of paradigms and fundamental change in the basic concepts and experimental practices of a scientific discipline. For those of us who went to the university in the 90s or maybe even 80s, our worldview can be explained thus. This is my knowledge. My knowledge and thoughts should conform to external reality. As we look around us now, particularly with the advent of social media, the new paradigm indicates that instead of examining whether thoughts and knowledge conform to external reality or facts, individuals can now pick and choose reports, news, and articles that conform not with external reality, but with preconceived beliefs. And this is exactly what our other friend was talking about. Now, how do we challenge this emerging paradigm? Of course, you and I know that critical thinking is important, except that critical thinking is something that is developed, it's a commitment that people make to intellectual integrity and also into their values. But then again, as leaders in communities, in a diverse community like New York, Somnath and I know that critical thinking is something that people can also catch as a vision. That is why it is important to continue to listen, to be quick to listen, slow to speech, and slow to be angry, because there will always be ideas and beliefs that will challenge our own. So critical thinking is number one in challenging emerging paradigms of pick and choose. Second, and going back to critical thinking includes the challenge to oneself to listen and read news and articles that one already knows contradict one's own. So for instance, if a person is just used to listening to either CNN, once in a while, it's great to check out what Fox News is saying. Or conversely, if a person is just listening and watching Fox News, then it's good to check CNN, because that's how we actually emerge as a critical thinker. And number two, we go back for the journalists. Adherence on a code of ethics is really important, because as my colleague actually already said, one's beliefs, we already have the biases. People already have existing biases. How do we do that? That's why it's important to have the code of ethics. Journalists, lawyers, we have that, and it's important for us to be mindful of that. And lastly, for people, for everyone, you and I, whether we're in New York, whether in the United States, whether in other countries, it's important to protect press freedom. Press freedom is not for the governors, it is for the governed. Namaste, everyone. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak with you. I enjoyed seeing all your beautiful faces. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Precise, short and sweet speech by Lara Gregory, attorney at law, and she's very active in the community work in New York and Queens area. And we have been working so long. And thanks for your everything, your guidance and all. Thank you, Lara.
Brother Somnath, I just forgot. So if you have the energy to do it, please go to Facebook and check out our Facebook page, Legal Good. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much.
Good. Okay, sure.
And hit that like button, okay? You have to hit the like button.
Okay, thank you. And we are just joined by Anil Fariyar from Assistant Senior Sub-Editor, Radio Kantipur for Kathmandu, Nepal. Then just joined by Habib Rahman, co-founder of TBN24, TV talk show host. So please welcome Habib Rahman, co-founder of TBN24 TV, for his presentation, for his speech.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm being late.
It's okay.
I'm different and all those things. Thank you. Is it my turn to talk now?
Yes, Habib Rahman. Yes.
Somnath, thank you for inviting me in this, and I really appreciate you doing this, and everybody else. And I'm a little late. So I was listening to the last part of Mr. Indrajit Singh, and he was very descriptive about things, and I'm really impressed by what he said, even though I caught the middle to the last part of it. And I was also listening to Laura Gregory, is it? Okay. She's been super short, super sweet, and precise. But going back to the concept that we are talking about, I was a little confused by the topic that you picked, and that's post-COVID journalists' role and things like that. The reason it confused me is because I didn't understand. I didn't understand what it means, because journalism, the journalists, their role really should it change or should not change as to what the reality is, or should we adjust to reality? For example, if you hear there's a fire, everybody should run away from it, but the journalist goes in and jump in to that situation, meaning jump into the fire to help out people or get the story right. However, and that that's where the problem lies, right? because if you listen to Mr. Inderjeet Singh, what he was saying, and he's a very brave person, because nowadays when you speak out the truth or write about it, and be fair, regardless of your race, religion, color, ethnicity, and the place where you live, and if you are really doing okay job, you should speak out about things that you think these are imbalanced in the society or unjust and not the right thing. In the US, you will see if you do right properly, if you're on the left side, then you call the right the radical right. If you're on the right side, you call the left the idiots and destroying the country. And you have a president who calls everybody anything that he doesn't like the fake news. It's one of the most popular things that we hear nowadays. So how do we go about doing our job? At the same time, Mr. Inderjeet was saying, what's going on in the Modi, and we all know, as Mr. Jeet knows, Somnath, Laura, and all the other panelists, you are listening. We all know what he is doing. We know that, and it's so funny if you look at this third world countries. It's the same thing. You look at India, you look at Nepal, you look at Bangladesh. Look at Sri Lanka. If you deep go Maldives, you will see the same thing. It's no different. If you going back to Bangladesh, if you look at it, the current political party has held down everybody. If you speak out, then you are in danger. Okay. And that's going to happen time to time. That's going to happen. But our job is to speak up and really speak the truth. As a journalist, and I'm going to take some keynotes that I was listening to Mr. Jeet. Fairness. It's, as a human, we are biased, more or less. It's just bound to happen, right? But how much bias are you? But it comes down to critical thinking and analysis of a story or the situation as a journalist and put it out there as is, because who you are working for? Nobody. At one point, somebody mentioned, I'm not sure who mentioned it, the government should help us. That's really a bad idea, really bad idea, because once somebody starts helping you, you will becoming their employee, and you'll once you become their employee, your critical analysis, regardless of what it is, it's out of the window. Your fairness is gone, and you will be writing to what they want you to write. And this is so important right now, because the newspapers, the television stations, due to COVID-19, has been hit hard when it comes to revenue. Really hit hard. Now, a lot of people many organizations, and so it's okay, we should go to city agencies. We should go to the state and ask for funding, because we have to move on. We have to keep those jobs on. We need to but once you do that, once you start doing this, you start taking the funds from state government or local government, you are obligated to their, to certain things they want you to do. Whatever those things are. And hence comes the issue with, would you deal with it or not? And then it also puts you at the risk of, are you going to stay in a business, or are you going to disappear? Okay. So all these things are very important. Like, as a journalist, your fairness, your analysis, your truthfulness, your fear of job is going to be always there. Because if you speak out the truth, whether you'll be fired by your own company, or you can lose your job down the line, or you can lose your life. It all comes down to that. What is our role in this dangerous journey? What is our role? And that's what we have to look into, as to what should be our role, and what rule do we provide? Of course, we have our own rules. We have to have a rule, because you can see, it was nicely said that, I think it's Laura said that, if you're watching CNN, you should also go and watch Fox News, because it actually gives you a perspective of two companies, two distinctive views. and you can actually compare and contrast. And we at one point she said critical thinking. That's a loaded word. So I just want to be really brief on this. Well, there are a few things that we look at the world. You go to the university and you actually think that you are going to look at the world and that's what you're going to see because it has to match with your reality. And we are born with preconceived. We are all born with preconceived ideas, and there is no difference. If I'm Hindu, I'm going to look into the world from my lenses, and if I'm Muslim, I'm going to look into my lenses. And look at India, look at Modi, and you will see what Mr. Indrajit just said. It's no different because of the preconceived idea. Who are we? We are the people with pens. Okay, little people. We're the little people with pens and freedom to speak. We are the responsible party to speak up. We can lose our job. We can lose our lives. We can lose our family, and that's the risk you take. How far do you push it? That's the question. How far do you push? Sometimes you're going to say something that you believe it's the right thing to say, and you compare something and people will crucify you for saying that. I'll give you one example. Last month, one of my talk shows, when we heard the news Russia has came up with the vaccine and they're going to start selling it to the third world countries, and they have billion doses of orders in their stock. And when I started looking into it, I found out that they did not have a phase 3 trial. So they're about to sell this vaccine without a phase 3 trial. So when I had my talk show, when I talked about this, of course, I'm in the US, so I can speak up against the Russians. So that's an easy thing to do. However, when I compare that of Hindu fundamentalists who are suggesting drinking the cow urine will fix corona issues, we hear this. And believe me or not, I was attacked, and I had to hear many things, but I had to take the responsibility, put it out there, because when we base our ideas, when we base our analysis, we must present it to the audience as is and let them make the decision. And if you step back and you say, okay, I can't do this right now because it's too risky, maybe it is. In that sense, maybe this is not your job. So I just want to cut short. I'm sorry I took up a lot of time. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak up here, and it was really nice meeting you, all of you. Hopefully one day we'll meet in person and then have tea or whatever you drink. Thank you.
Thank you, Habib Rahmanji, for your valuable points and sharing your experiences among the panelists. Let's hope for the best and work together. Next, Priyanka Sharma. I see her here. Please, Priyanka Sharma, Senior Correspondent and Gujarat Bureau Chief of Republic TV.
Finally, thank you so much. Apologies for the network issues that I was having. I'd like to obviously thank GPK for having me again here, because I think these are some of the most amazing discussions that I ever get to have is on these webinars with like-minded journalists and of course other people of other industries as well. So thank you for that. But the topic today is very, very interesting, and it's also something that is carving out a sample size to understand the post-COVID world of South Asian, at least journalists, and journalists as of course tell you tales of the entire society. It is a very nice way to learn basically what the post-COVID world is going to look like in at least Asia, South Asia. But I could, if I could speak about India particularly, there were a lot of great panelists who raised amazing issues and amazing points. Indrajit ji had said something about credible information and how there has to be open criticism. And I completely agree with that there has to be a voice of dissent. There has to be a voice that the media is to be given, the journalists have to be given, and they have to take it themselves to actually make sure that whatever they're reporting on is heard and there is cognizance taken by the dispensation or whoever is responsible for whatever story is being done. So, but very interestingly, what Indrajit ji said is something about credible information. And this is something also which has been repeated by a lot of panelists who have said that there is a peril of fake news that has come out in the COVID-19 situation as well. And I completely agree. As somebody who is on the ground, as somebody who's on the field, understanding the entire situation of COVID-19, I agree that there was a lot of misinformation. There was a lot of panic as well that was created and mongered by a lot of people via the devious means of WhatsApp messages as well. Something that we see a lot going on in this COVID situation, where there was a lot of uncensored information. There was a lot of authenticated and completely unreliable information that came out. So I think that is exactly some of the perils that we are supposed to be facing as journalists, not only specific to one geographical place, but also across the country, because I think that this is the social media, which is a democratized version of the news, and that has taken over. And I think that goes beyond geography, that goes beyond geographical boundaries, that we adhere to usually. So fake news, of course, is something that we have to look at, and we have to understand as journalists how to tackle it. And because somebody else also said, I think Lara raised a very important point about critical thinking. And I would like to join both these points and say that I think we're inching towards the solution to all these perils that we say in journalism, that we see are the negative points of the industry or the profession. Because Lara said something about critical thinking, and then I agree, because we have not taught an entire generation, we have not taught a lot of people to understand how the research methodology works, to understand how to verify a fake news, to understand how to see what are authenticated sources of news that we can take from. So I think to take one step ahead from what Lara had said about critical thinking, I think there is also a level of emotional intelligence that is required in our field, in our profession, by journalists as well, because a lot of fake news, a lot of misinformation came out from the journalists themselves, which was very, very interesting and also very disheartening, because journalists themselves did not have the basic knowledge or understanding of how to authenticate a news. So I think this specific region, if I could talk about India as a country, we are at a very nascent stage to understand how this kind of peril of social media or of fake news, how are we going to be tackling that? So I think emotional intelligence plays a very key factor. And of course, research methodology needs to be taught to people. And I think it is very easily available on the net. It is easily available for anyone to look up and understand how am I supposed to authenticate a news piece. So, that is exactly what I mean when I say emotional intelligence, because I think what Lara was also referring to was a confirmation bias. We usually look at the news which we agree with. So, if you want it or not, there are political leanings that everyone has now. There is no such thing as apolitical anymore. So, I believe when we challenge our own confirmation bias, it helps us as a society. Because when we challenge our confirmation bias, for example, if I am a believer of one political party, and a channel only covers good news, good positive news of that party, I must force myself to watch another channel to see the other side's perspective. So, and especially in a time like this, when we are not supposed to be roaming outside, we're not supposed to be having gathering, we are supposed to have, we should be able to rely on the information that is disseminated from TV channels or newspapers, or any authenticated source of journalists, when journalists bring you those news pieces. So I agree when I say about the confirmation bias of things. But very interestingly, I remember this one quote that a journalist had said, where she had said that good journalism does not have genitals. I would go ahead and say that good journalism does not even have a political ideology. I think it is the raising questions to power, asking questions to the dispensation, pointing out what's wrong, pointing out what needs to be corrected in our society. I think that is the basis of journalism. I think it is not about being loyal to your ideology, but I think it's being loyal to the essence of your profession, which is the personification of the fourth estate, at least how we look at it in India. And in India, we have a system of checks and balances. So when we look at journalism as a fourth estate, it adds all the more importance to it, because journalists are the ones who are supposed to make sure that these checks and balances happen in the way that the system was designed for it to happen. So when what that evolves into meaning in a pandemic situation is all the more important, because journalists are going out and getting all the information, and they are the only ones who act as a bridge between the politicians and the masses. So when the masses are not in a situation to ask these questions, or are not in a situation to understand the situation, you have to go out and make sure that you become a messenger for the masses. So I think that is what it is evolving towards as well. I think journalists, if I could submit anecdotal evidence about it, because I think journalists, when we speak to each other, we also understand that now we understand the importance of being a journalist in this time when the only essential services are working. And just a side note to this is that journalism sometimes is not looked at as essential services, which is disheartening, because we are the ones who are out. It's a ghost town out there. People are not allowed to step out. It's a pandemic situation. It's very dangerous. There is limited to no information available. So I think that is the role of the media as of now. But if I could speak specifically about India, we are a very religious country. Controversial thing to touch for me, but I would very briefly talk about it, because I think something that which is unique about India in the South Asian perspective of things, I think it is the variations of religions that we have in our country, the differences of religions, the variety of religion that we have in our country. And because, of course, there are religious ceremonies as well. And ceremonies is something that requires people to be able to gather, which is a huge calamity waiting to happen if that actually is allowed. So what we have to look at is how these things will also function now, because we had a variation of responses from the government as well when it came to religious gatherings. Because now what we are facing as a country is, now we're starting to slowly open up the economy, kickstart our businesses, make sure that we fight the economic slowdown and the downfall. So I think another thing that we're facing is also these gatherings, because we had the Rath Yatra. If I could just speak about that a little bit, we had the Rath Yatra, then we had Holi during the time that the pandemic was in place, and the lockdown was in place. But all of these things are now slowly opening, so it is also more responsible, and it is all the more important for a journalist to be out there and to make sure and to speak reason to the dispensation as well. Because religion, why I touched upon religion, is because politics and religion sometimes is inseparable. Unfortunately, what is happening is that politicians use religion as a step ladder for votes or in elections. So that is why it is very important to speak reason to the government, to not give into that vote sharing, vote bank politics at this time, and to remind them that there is a pandemic in place. Because speaking about anecdotal evidences about this, I personally had covered the Rath Yatra that was going to happen in India. And, there were variation of responses from the government. They were ready to do it, but only because of a high court order, they were not able to carry out the Rath Yatra in Ahmedabad in Gujarat state of India. And other than that, we have several other, things that are now going to be opened up. So anecdotally speaking, the evolution of journalism is looking as though that the importance that the journalists used to get is going to be multifold more, because I think now people will come back to the original sources of media, original sources of information, like news channels, probably not newspapers in physical form, but on digital platforms. So that is something that we are seeing slowly evolving towards. Now, of course, because we have spoken about this a lot, but if we also look at the personal issues that a journalist might also face during the time of being just in this profession during a time of a pandemic, is also that from now on, everything that we cover next, I think Habib said this very beautifully, that when there is a house on fire, everybody else is running in the other direction, but a journalist is the one who goes inside and makes sure that they get all the facts and figures to report on this. So everything that we cover from now on as journalists, and I think other journalists in the panel will agree with me, it will be a double disaster. It will be an add-on to the already pandemic that we are facing on the ground. Of course, we have to wear personal protection equipment, we have to wear masks, we have to make sure we have our sanitizers, we have to make sure who we are coming to meet. If that person is a public figure, goes in the middle of public too much, so it might be a little bit too dicey for us to be there in the field right now. But just to leave it at this, that anything and everything going forward that we face as a profession, as a media personnel, as journalists, is going to be an add-on to the already in play pandemic. So even when we're reporting on a story, the subtext of the pandemic is not going to go away. So I think that is something that we're looking at, an evolved version of our profession. And I'd like to yield my time, if I'm left with any, to any questions.
Thank you so much, Priyanka Sharma, for your valuable inputs. And as we are live on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, we have a Q&A session at the end of 10 minutes. If we have some questions by the viewers, we'd like to address by the panelists. Okay, and moving forward, I would like to recognize Ramesh Khatri, social activist who just joined in the panel, and Vijay Bahadur Chauhan, the Senior Vice President of Transport Entrepreneurs Association. Now, without any delay, I'd like to invite journalist, editor-in-chief, Bharatraj Paudel from SouthAsia.com from Australia. Bharatraj Paudel.
Thank you, Somnathji, and great respect to our former foreign minister and Nepali Congress leader. I'm actually from the media academia background, and I'm doing journalism on the side and doing radios and online in Australia. Without any further delay, I just want to start with the current situation. This time in Asia, we are now focused on Asia, but we can take examples of other countries where we are living. But this is the greatest news value time for our generation. 7.6 billion people are watching news, and it's more than in Second World War. So 2.5 billion people were following news in those days. Now 75% of the world is under lockdown. So that means it seems like everything is locked down, but our media is still active, and our frontline workers are working on our hospitals and nursing homes and public sectors. So people have worried about, they have a great worry about the future of media. In Nepal, we can take our take our country as an example of mismanagement this time, and our country hasn't taken any safety, effective safety measures against pandemic in public level or in other people who we need to support in frontline sector. So that is very sad for us, and our journalists are losing job from their newsroom, and the strangers have already lost job, and other permanent journalists have been asked to they were asked to take leave in some stance, but that hasn't happened. But some people have already lost a job, and increased restriction. In regards to this restriction, our country is indirectly restricting the flow of information. But our constitution doesn't say that. We are very much democratized country in South Asia, but our current regime is not letting our media to freely exercise what we have been given by the constitution. That means the leaders from the ruling party side are promoting infodemic this time. As you know, that Prime Minister in many occasions had said about some indigenous techniques to live with COVID-19. But that's the Prime Minister of the country should talk about the science, should refer to the chief medical officers, health professionals, scientists. That is not happening. And same thing happening in India, same thing happening in Philippines and Cambodia. Same thing happening in Brazil, and somehow it's the character of Donald Trump as well. And you can see other parts of the world, we don't talk much about China because we don't take any information right away from there. So we have to refer other sources. But India, Nepal, South Asia, Bhutan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, we can get information from there. This increased restrictions, as we see that International Press Institute just recently said, government restrictions are in the world. There are more than 200 records, 200 instances happened just recently. The countries have violated press freedom and imposed restrictions directly or indirectly. You can take example of Russia and other countries. And in Cambodia, there was a young boy aged 14 was arrested because of the incident that he has shared some social media information. So that's happening everywhere. But in our South Asia region, we need to know that while we are restricting our media, there is indirectly the right information is not coming in regards to health precautions and health related information. These media people, these reporters are not being able to report as they expected. So governments all over Asia are silencing critical journalism. We cannot critically look at the we cannot critically look at the issues where the authorities are lacking to address the problems. If there are some state governments or some police or army or some other frontline workers are not effectively working on the field, they should critically write about that. But that's not happening in our country or in our regions. So this is a big problem. And I can see that there are, we have been talking in many Zoom meetings since 4 months now, every day, almost every day, and we are repeating same thing. But press freedom, as per the United Nations, and we talk about WHO now. WHO has a mechanism to look at all these fake news, and they immediately correct if there is anything to inform the world. They immediately take action. There are about 10 to 15 high-level experts working in WHO, feeding media throughout the world. So that mechanism is working there, but WHO is in the middle of the world politics, and they are struggling to survive this politics. And in same way, in our developing countries or Asian, South Asian countries, our media is struggling. Our giant media outlets, they haven't had any difficulties in this situation. They earn money, a lot of money in the past, but they are not looking after the people. They're journalists. That's happening. That's why we need more organized, institutionalized media and team of professionals in the country. Our press council, our Department of Information, Ministry of Communication, and our leaders, our government cabinet members, all need to talk about the lacking part of media management in crisis. So these frontline defenders, frontline defenders have to be protected. That hasn't happened. I'm taking example of Australia. Australia government is giving every citizen, $1,500 a fortnight, whether they have job or not. They had to be registered on the tax arrangement. That cut point was March 1st. After March 1st, whoever has worked even one day can get 15, or lost a job can get $1,500 fortnightly. That means until next year March, which we call job keeper, and this money goes to the employer. So this money goes to the television and radio, where their journalists have lost a job. In America, I think America also giving money to people, but I don't know about the protection towards the media. But in Australia, government is giving everything they can to the people who were working until March 1st. So this time there may be restriction on access to information, which is still government in time. Sometime government can stop the information or stop the media reporting indirectly or directly. For example, in Australia and China has trade wrangling now, and they have a diplomatic problem. And this after since this COVID, it is heightened. The situation has heightened up, and these two countries are struggling to resolve this problem. And some states have had right to agreement with. I'm going to conclude now. Agreement with foreign governments. For example, Victoria government has signed a Belt and Road Initiative with China, but now Australian federal government prime minister is going to introduce a bill to stop that, because this right to the states is fueling. We have to. They think that they have to counter China's role. So this is happening, and this is sensibly taken by the media. So media reporting in this regard, China-Australia relation is very sensible now, and these people are in this COVID crisis. During this COVID crisis, they are working hard to to put this case in a valid way, in a evidence-based way. So in our Nepali context or Indian context, our medias are under under strict jacketing now. So local journalists in Nepal or India are working without pay. We can take example of community radio. All community radios, most of them are not paying their staffs. So I request our leader Sujata Koirala to take this type of issues, and I think as a opposition party, this time Congress is not taking effective role in the parliament and not in the street. Today I was watching one news that some young people from Nepali Congress were in the street. That was good. In this time, there is no one to check and balance the wrongdoing of the government. So we need to come to the street, or we need to protest in the parliament or any other public forum to stop the government from doing these unnecessary actions, restricting media and not letting health professionals to follow all these, to get all these resources required in crisis. So this is how things are happening in Nepal, and on the other side of the world, we are benefited by the respective governments. So we need to think towards that part of crisis management. Nepal can for some time look after their employees, their journalists, because we are raising money. We are raising money. We are raising revenues from the people. For 1 or 2 years, they have to be more sensible in addressing these problems where frontline workers are not getting appropriate attention. So I would like to conclude. I have so many things to say, but I want to stop here. Thank you for giving me this time. Thank you, Somnathji, and I thank you all the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bharatraj Porelji, for your valuable input. Next, I would like to invite Anil Paria, Assistant Senior Sub-Editor, Radio Kantipur. Anil Paria.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm really sorry for being late. Thank you so much, sir, for giving me a beautiful, wonderful opportunity. Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to meet you all. The COVID-19 pandemic presents the world with a huge challenges. Everyone and every area is affected, and the response has to be both quick and concerted. This pandemic started as a health crisis and led to education crisis, employment and economic crisis, a crisis of hunger and poverty, or a crisis of government and political stability for the country like Nepal. I'm an economic journalist, so let me start with the economic crisis due to COVID-19 pandemic. Beside fake news and truthfulness towards the job, we need to identify the field where we be the bridge to cover up and solve the issue with our news. COVID-19 crisis has triggered an economic fallout which will drive millions into poverty and worsen inequality. It impacts on people, finance, trade, remittance, employment, and other great opportunities. Nepal entered the COVID-19 crisis with no preparedness. The COVID-19 outbreak hit us when government have limited fiscal space to launch relief packages needed to minimize socioeconomic impact. Lockdowns and other steps taken by government to minimize the spread of the pandemic and save lives have cast a heavy shadow on our economic and social in every sector. Collapse of international trade has affected to lot, causing job losses, foreign exchange remittance, which account for over 30% of share of GDP of Nepal, liquidity crunch, supply barriers, labor shortage, which result hardness to reactivate businesses. Loss of jobs and livelihoods could push up to 132 million people into extreme poverty in South Asia, beginning in India, followed by Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. Inequalities will widen as women, Dalit, and marginal groups are affected more in recent days. Women are affected in terms of income loss, increased burden of unpaid care work, higher exposure risks due to over representation of women in healthcare, in government industry, and many more sectors. School closure results in inequalities in learning to the children belonging to disadvantaged section due to the digital divide. Now let me focus on Nepali media sector. The Nepali media sector has also been affected by the coronavirus. Till today, 98 journalists are affected by the coronavirus. Some are recovered and some are undergoing treatment. It is estimated that there are 13,000 active journalists in Nepal. According to Nepal Press Council, 6% of them, around 900 journalists, have lost their job, and management has asked 6% to take leave, while 6% have not received salary on time. Some of the newspapers were shut due to the ongoing lockdown. After the closure of newspaper and printing presses, all the department workers, journalists, and distributors have lost their job. And also advertisement for newspaper has dropped by 80%. The revenue of most of the radio station in Nepal has dropped by 70%. 40% of online portal television by television revenue dropped by 60%. Journalism is not a sustaining job. We cannot run family only depending on salary. Either our partner or we ourselves should find out a part-time job. But this is our passion. So we, as a journalist, we need to focus this issue clearly and fulfill the responsibility. We should not forget the ethics of journalism in this time. And the best part, if media focus something, if we speak of something, then we can definitely solve the issue as we media. Let me tell you a real story. One of my colleagues was saying that he's getting half salary and his whole family is dependent on him. His wife is in maternity phase and she gave birth twins. He has to pay the rent to house owner in the very beginning of month. The stage, his situation was so worst. It is uncertain that how will he feed his wife and such phase, and how will he run his family. This is just an example. There are many untold stories behind the scene we can explain in this time. The journalists who write others' story have their own. Thank you so much for now.
Thank you, Anil Pariyaji, for your brief situation about Nepali journalists in Nepal. Thanks again. And once we have some questions, we'll get back to you again. Next and the last panelist of this forum, DP Kafle, General Secretary from People Forums for Human Rights from Bhutan. DP Kafle.
Thank you, Somji, for giving me the opportunity to meet.
Can I see you put your video on, please?
Thank you, Somji, for giving me the opportunity to meet the panelists. My senior.
DP Kafle, please put your video on. Cannot see you.
Now?
No. Tap on the video down somewhere in the bottom, the video. Okay, yes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Somji, for giving me the opportunity to speak in front of my seniors and panelist friends who are very much perfect in this media field. Though I'm not a journalist, but I'm a human rights activist, which is correlated with the media and this thing. In context of South Asia, the journalism in South Asia, I have marked few things to be share with you all. One thing that if you are not united, like SAARC and other organizations, if you are united like that, the media should be perfect and their voice will be listened by the government if you just pressurize them. What I see is that the media is not well organized, well united. If you talk about India, the Indian media will talk about India only, not the neighbors. So if Nepali media talks about Nepal only. So if what I feel is that if the media of all the South Asian region, not only the South Asian region, but the world, if they are united and be in a forum, then I don't think that government can do anything because of the power of media and the pen. So I remember the days though I was not born in 1958, Mr. G.P. Koirala, Honorable G.P. Koirala, he just wanted to bring Bhutan in present democratization, but unfortunately, there has been no media to explore the news from inside, so it failed. So now, I always remember the help for the Bhutanese people rendered by Honorable G.P. Koirala, and now I thank Sujata Didi for continuing the work for the Bhutanese people, because she is also working for to help the Bhutanese people who wants democracy and wants to live as an impartial human beings in the world. So what I feel is that media should not listen to anyone, not to give the fake news, but it should be go and learn deeply what will be the situation, what is the situation going on, and flash the news. If you are found, if even a single media is found fake in this pandemic, then the government wants to suppress and want to say that all the medias are fake. So I request the media friends not to give the fake news, first you censor. Though I know that the journalists in the region, South Asian region, they are facing a lot of difficulties. So until and unless they unite together, this difficulty will continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, DP Kapleji, for your short, sweet remarks. Now, just a minute remarks from Central President Pushkar Acharya, Nepal Trade Union Congress. Then we will enter into the second session, QA session, question and answer.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother Somnathji. Our leader, Sujata Koirala, and the distinguished speakers who are joining this Zoom meeting. Especially, I just listening to all of the members who are discussing about the situation of the pandemic and the role of the media persons in Nepal. So in Nepal, there is so many difficulty at this time. So many people are retrenched by the media owners. So many workers are retrenched in the media area. So that is feels some difficulty, but especially the big silence for the media person at this time due to the coronavirus, because they have to go to the circulate the news, and they come with the people and contact with the people. Then they can suffer with this coronavirus, and they are suffering. So we have to say that the media person at this time are the main warrior of the coronavirus. So they have to save, and government have to save them to their life. So the government do so many things about these things. Especially at this time, government did not do anything to protect the coronavirus. Even they did not play their role for the protect with the coronavirus, save the people, save the Nepalese from the coronavirus. So even though the opposition party also did not raise their voice, so we say that the opposition also say the voice, because they cannot do so many things, but they can raise the people's voice. They can raise the media person's voice in the parliament, and the media person can protect at this time, especially coronavirus. pandemic is very brutally affected in Nepalese people nowadays. That is very affected. So we have to just say to them, we have to rise the people's through this media persons. That is the most time to do for the media peoples at this time. So I think media have to connect with the people for these times. Thank you, brothers, to give me this answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Central President, Nepal Trade Union Congress, Pushkar Acharya-ji, for your short and sweet remarks. Now we enter into the Q&A session. We have 3 questions so far. First question goes to Professor Dr. Indrajit Saluja. So talking about...
yes, can you hear me? Som, can you hear me, my dear?
Yes, I can hear you now, yeah.
Let me make a remark first, my friend.
There is a question for you first.
It has been
a question.
It has been a wonderful session.
Indrajit Saluja ji, please. There is a question for you from our viewers.
Okay.
Can you address that question first, then give your remarks?
Sure.
So the question goes to you from one of our live viewers. What do you suggest? What is your concept on getting independent, united journalists?
The concept is reject any kind of protectionism, because I personally feel the friend who has asked this question, my friend, if you are listening to me, protectionism is very addictive and it drains your initiative. And when initiative is gone, it results in dog-like slavishness. If you are looking for government protection and patronage, you are selling your soul to the devil. So my idea of journalism is that you be independent of all pressures, everything coming from any source which you believe is not letting you work truthfully, stand against that, whatever the consequences. That is what I would suggest to my friends. That is my reply. And let me just, a remark, if you give me just half a minute.
Yes.
To my Nepalese friends, I sympathize with all my Nepalese journalists. I know, as I said in the beginning, I have known things about Nepal, and it really hurts me a lot. It really pains me a lot to find Nepali friends, Nepali journalist friends living in very difficult situation, working under very difficult circumstances in Nepal. And let me assure my friends, colleagues from Nepal, that if ever I could be of any service, my services will always be available to them to raise their issues and to do anything that I could do in a positive way to promote the idea of better deal for my Nepalese journalists. Thank you so much, Somo, for giving me time. Thank you. Can't hear you. Your voice is not traveling.
Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Indrajit Saluja-ji, for addressing that question and your remarks. Now, next question, there is a question for Habib Rahman. Please unmute. What is the current situation in terms of journalism in Bangladesh, and what do you suggest on forming an independent journalist association?
A good question. I will be very brief. The problem with the third world countries, it's always journalists are under pressure, and whoever the government is, they have their own agendas and stuff like that. one is more than the other or less than the others, but it more or less this situation there is you can't speak up. And that's just that's the way it is now. I hope they come up. I don't live there. I left the country 30 years ago, so I don't. I do have some attachment. I do hear from things from my friends who are top level journalists in the top level TV industries or newspapers. I work very closely with few people. One of the top newspaper in Bangladesh called Pratham Alo. So I know the situation. You write anything that goes against the government, you are straight in the jail. You are tortured. So this has to change. How? That's a big question. That's $1 million question. I don't have an answer for that. I wish I do, but we can definitely. It's a big discussion that I'm same thing goes in Nepal. You had this incident where you 3 other journalists wrote about the Chinese government, and they are put into jail. So it's a very similar situation. I know we journalists, we know what's happening. You know what's happening. So I don't have an answer for that, but maybe at a later discussion we can talk about this. Due to shortage of time, I'll let you go. But it's a beautiful question that also always bugs me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Habib Rahmanji. And the last question I have for today to Priyanka Sharma. What is your concept on forming an independent journalist association? Please unmute. Cannot hear you. Please unmute, Priyanka ji. Please unmute. Cannot hear you. Please unmute. I believe she got lost. And I'd like to call upon Lara Gregory for your remarks, conclusion remarks.
Thank you so much, my brother Somnath. Thank you to GPK Foundation. Thank you to the Honorable Kairala. Thank you for organizing this. I know that this has been a series of sessions like this, and it's really important to remain connected, to fight for press freedom, and to express differing views in this day and age where we are isolated, a lot of us. There's so many people suffering in our communities, even in Queens, which has been the epicenter at the start of the pandemic. So the work that the foundation is doing cannot be overemphasized as extremely vital and important. We have partnered with the foundation in doing a lot of stuff, even seminars, and we will continue to do that with Somnath, and of course, collaborating with the other journalists who are in New York right now, and even probably in other areas. So there's work to be done. There will always be frustrations and difficulties, but we will move onward because that is the way we humans are. We are resilient, we are strong, and we can overcome. Thank you so much again for having me.
Thank you, Lara, for joining us as a panelist for our 12th Global Zoom conference. Next, Dipendra Bantawa, please. Your remarks about 1 minute. Dipendra Bantawa.
Thank you, everyone, that you enlightened very much in the different aspect of journalism throughout the globe, and the situation that you mentioned in different countries are not same. But in Nepal, we are facing so much difficulties, but still we are doing good. We are doing our best in our way. So that's only the concern that I want to say. I would like to thank Mr. Habib, Mr. Indrajit, and Priyanka, and Lara, and it's very pleasure to have Mr. Bharaj Podel that he enlightened very much to us, and thank you, Somnathji, for letting me to share my views and to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dipendra ji. Okay, Priyanka Sharma, go ahead, please. I see you joined.
Yeah. So I think, again, thank you so much, Somnaji, to also for having us here to be able to have this forum for us to be able to discuss these things that need discussion as of now. For brilliant minds and even more senior than me, professionals who from the same industry who have come here, I think I feel blessed to be here and to be able to listen to their thoughts and to be able to converse with them even after this. So I think this is a great forum for us to have. And also because I think there was some problem in the network, I'll just quickly answer that question also that was posed to me. I think it is a very, very interesting and a very innovative idea for us to have an independent forum for journalists as well, a body for journalists, because now we're transcending borders of geography. And I think the kind of issues that we're facing are very, very similar to each other. So I think there is something that can come out from this independent forum of journalists which goes beyond borders. And I think it will be great and very interesting to speak about that to other journalists on the panel as well sometime later. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka Sharma. Finally, you got connected with the technical problems. Same thing happened in Nepal too sometimes. Thanks again for your valuable inputs and your suggestions, sharing your ideas. Next, I'd like to invite Anil Pariyar for your final remarks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone, for sharing the platform, lightening the reality. Whatever the problems we will rise again, we'll fight back. Thank you, JP Koirala Foundation. Thank you all.
And then Dr. Bharat Paudel for your final remarks.
Yeah, just a quick one. We are worried about our future. I urge our media friends more be focused on digital engagement, so we can bring our guests over Skype or Zoom or any other things on television or maybe on telephone or any other form. We can enjoy few months, few years with the digital applications. And we need to promote science, not the suspicion. So this is time for promoting science. And the other thing is we need to limit, when we write news, we need to limit our, the words, the adjectives. We are too much, we're using some words like deadly virus, horrific, catastrophic, some terrific words we are using in the news to terrify our readers. So we need to limit the adjectives, and we need to choose carefully the words and the other frames of the news, and we need to frame stories with context. And we need to prioritize statistical, anecdotal, anecdotal or generalization. So I urge our media friends who are working in the field as a frontline worker, please be focused on our media science, not the superstitions or not the the government's misinformation. Sometime you get misinformation from the government. Sometime you need to filter that, and you get misinformation from the sources. Sometime you need to get to that to fix the problem. And we will be back into our normal position after a couple of years, I hope. So the digital age of the media has just started. Good luck to our media friends. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your final remarks, Dr. Bharat Paudel. And finally, I would like to invite Honorable Sujata Koirala, former Deputy Prime Minister and former Foreign Minister, and the Chairperson of Girija Prasad Koirala Foundation for her final remarks.
Somnathji, thank you very much for organizing this program. And I'd like to thank everybody who participated. And it was really a wonderful evening to hear everybody and learn from their experiences. And I'm quite sure after the COVID, we will see better future. The journalists will have a better future. And like in a country like Nepal or South Asia, developing countries, journalists, they face a lot of problems, economical problems. So they are always dependent on other sources. So that is also a big problem. The correct news should come, like just now a journalist said here that news one should be independent and must have an independent thought. But to be independent and to stand on your feet, you have to also financially be very strong. And so the journalists should be very well paid and must get proper training. And we have to now think more about, I think, also digital system. We have to work more on that rather than in the print media. And anyway, thank you so much. It was so nice. And I really learned so much from you all. And thank you so much. I think this is our third session, no, Somnathji? The third one.
Yeah, this is
From the
journalism,
media.
the third one. Yeah.
Journalism.
The overall 12
Yeah.
series. Yes.
No, I learned so much, so much. It's really good. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Sujata Koirala. And this all the global Zoom conference, the idea has been created by our Honorable Chairperson Sujata Koirala, and we named it as GPKF 3 Eyes, that is Girija Prasad Koirala Foundation, International Intellectuals Institution, and we call it virtual institution. So we have different expertise in different fields, researchers, scientists, human rights defenders, journalists like you guys today, and all of different sectors. We call on in the Zoom meeting and we share and we learn from them, moving forward for the better world in post-COVID-19. And finally, I would like to thank from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of GPK Foundation and on behalf of GPK Foundation America. Thank you so much to all the panelists who have participated today and share your experiences and your suggestions, which will definitely help in the generation to come for the better future. And we definitely look forward again joining this other panel, incoming panels. This is our 12th global Zoom conference concluded today, and you can always like our Facebook page, GPK Foundation, and all the updates are there. And again, thank you again for joining this 12th series of global conference. We hope to see you soon. Stay safe and healthy.
Thank you, Somnath.
Okay.
Before everybody
Thank you.
goes, can we take a photo? Can we take a group photo?
Yes, sure.
Please turn on your video, guys, so we can have everyone in the photo. Who's
Yes.
gonna take it? Are you taking it, Somnath? I can take it.
You can hear everybody.
Dear Bahadur, your
Bahadur,
video is not on.
Video is not on. Please put your video on.
All right. So, Bir Bahadur, are you turning your video on? Perfect. Thank you. So 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Great meeting you guys. Thank you so much again.
Bye.
Thank you.
Stay
Thank you.
safe. Watch out over there. Let's get rid of the COVID-19.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
All right. Be safe, everybody. Bye.
Bye, Habibji. Thank you for joining. Bye, Indrajit ji, Priyanka ji, Dipendra ji, Bharatraj ji, everybody. Bye, DP Upadhyay ji. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Acharya ji, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Namaste.
Namaste. Bye-bye.
Thank you.